Past legends.
Oh, well, I did. As it turned out, Brian Wilson, who was the president of Woodville, was Carmel's dad, my wife's dad. So I had a bit of a connection with Woodville in its own funny way. But, I really enjoyed it there. The first day we went to training, there was 90 players, I reckon. What the hell are we going to do here? But Bruce, I'm really pleased that Bruce came with me because we did it all together. And then when I shot through, he was able to, to get the premiership win, which was wonderful. And but he was a great footy thinker as well. So we had a lot of fun though. And my factory was at 822 Port Road, so I just had to walk down the road.
You went far away.
Worked out all right. Well, was that something that the SNFL approached you about, or was that generally the Woodville West Torrens Footy Club?
No, Woodville West Torrens. Yeah. I mean, I can't remember specifically what happened because I'm getting old, but it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it, and not that I didn't still believe in Norwood and love Norwood. I thought it was probably my time. I'd been there for a fair while, and it was a good thing to do. So as it turned out, it really helped me in the longer term as well to go to another club. So and we finished up, sadly, at Melbourne for a few years, which didn't work as well as we would have liked it to have worked. But
let's get a few things there though, Balme. You did get All Australian coach in '94. You're nice and unlucky. You've got Schwartz, who's pretty close to the best player. He's with Carey as an absolute gun. He gets injured. Lyon gets injured. Tingay, and Todd Viney goes to coach Mark Philippoussis. Like, you're nice and unlucky. You didn't have four of your best, 40 out. You lost four of your best, probably 6 or 7. You were unlucky. God.
Yeah, we were a bit unlucky. And then also they ran out of dough and think they might bloody merge with Hawthorn. And, oh, God, can you imagine how that went? I mean, that was awful. And then all of a sudden, because of that, the Joe Goodnicks of the world come in and he wouldn't know shit from clay, if you don't mind me, my terminology.
No, I don't. I was pretty sure you don't exchange Christmas cards. I worked that out on the way back.
So that was horrible for me. But in a lot of ways, it was the best thing to ever happen because it said, well, hang on, maybe coaching's not what you should do, but you should stay in footy. And it probably got me to ultimately go to footy admin, which has probably suited me even better than coaching in lots of ways. So, I mean, it's rare that things happen and there's not something good about them. But it was pretty unpleasant and uncomfortable time when Goodnick was around. So, and I haven't really forgiven Melbourne for that to a degree because it was awful, really.
Oh, getting sacked virtually at halftime over the radio was extraordinary. It was bizarre.
It was wonderful, wasn't
it? Oh, jeez.
Talking about the Melbourne Hawthorn merger, how close was that to happening, or were you involved with some of the discussions with that?
Oh, well, I'd spoken to the Melbourne people and I had to say that I supported it because that's what the board decided to do, but I thought it was a stupid idea, but it was never really going to happen because Hawthorn didn't want it to happen at all. And it would have made no sense at all because if you merge Hawthorn and Melbourne, what happens? One of them loses who they are. Maybe they both do. I mean, it was just madness, and they were just strapped for cash and didn't know what to do and didn't know what their next step was and didn't have the money and all that sort of stuff. So I really felt a bit sorry for them in a way because people like Ian Ridley and those guys are wonderful people, but they were just battling to survive a bit. But it should never have been considered and was never really going to happen, as it turned out.
No, fair call. I know you did mention this a little bit with Joseph Goodnick. The problems with what I call the front of house and back of house with a bit of a chefing background, in that if they don't work together, it doesn't work. Did that really mould you into the administrator that you are today with that experience?
I think I already knew that, to be fair, but it certainly did. reinforce what I what I believed in. There's no doubt about that. That you've got to be honest with people, and they got to trust you. And if they trust you, you've got a decent chance to get the best out of them. And that's not what was happening at that stage. No.
And then the administrative career, Collingwood. You nearly got up to in the grand final there, where ironically a goal umpiring call against Rocker probably cost Collingwood dearly there. So you're unlucky there, and then of course we'll get onto the Geelong side of it with Hales and that side of it. But yeah, great career in administration as well, Balme. Go through some, starting off at Collingwood and all that sort of things.
Yeah, well, the Collingwood time was fantastic, and we were a bit stiff. We did lose a couple of grand finals and against the AFL team because the AFL looked after Brisbane in those days. But that was just the way it was. But we were a little bit stiff, but we were pretty competitive and very strong. And I think I had a reasonable influence there. And I really kind of enjoyed my Collingwood time. But I'd sort of come to the end of it in the end, and I was lucky enough to get to Geelong, who were fantastic. They're wonderful culture. Cookie was fantastic. I mean, Tommy Harley was an old Adelaide mate, as it turned out, and he's done really well. And he's now, Sydney or whatever. So, no, he's a really good fella. But Geelong was fantastic. I really enjoyed that. Balme was good fun in the early days, and then we appointed Scotty as well. So, I genuinely, I enjoyed the Collingwood time. I really did. But even more so at Geelong, I've still got a lot of time for Geelong. I think they're a really good bunch of people and do things the right way, personally. But I've been lucky. I've had some good things to do in footy, and then I went back to Collingwood for a couple of years because I wanted to help Bucks, and I saw him the other day, and he's a terrific person. But I wasn't really able to quite get that done either, sadly. But that's only because I think they went a bit mad themselves, from inside. But then that led me to going back to the Tigers, which in the end was probably is going to be my legacy in footy because I'm a Richmond man deep down.
Yeah.
Because I played for them, and I've had some wonderful times. And I'm still hanging around there. I'm not doing quite as much as I did before, but still very engaged and very much a Richmond man. And Rick, I can't walk down the street without somebody talking to me. So that's probably not a bad thing, is it?
Not at all.
No.
Who was instrumental in getting you to Collingwood, in the first place?
Oh, Eddie appointed me. I'm not quite sure what the influence was and who was the ones who knew what they were doing. But no, Eddie certainly appointed me, Eddie Maguire. Yeah.
And you were mates with Mick Malthouse from your Richmond days?
Yeah, I'd played with him at Richmond, so it was terrific. I really loved playing with him. So, but it was quite funny because, sure, he was coaching the first year and then was always going to give it away. And then so Ed comes to us and said, well, what are we going to do about a coach? Oh, well, the process is there. There's plenty of people out there. Let's go and talk to them all and go through it all. And he said, well, what about Malthouse? Would he be any good? I said, well, yeah, he's been wonderful at the West Coast, and I think he'd be terrific. We should put him through the process. Well, he came back 3 days' time and said, Malthouse is coming to coach us, which is kind of not that helpful to us in terms of footy management because we weren't able to, talk to him about what we needed from him and what we needed to do and all that. And not that it was a hell of a problem because Mick was a bloody good coach, but he didn't really he felt that he had to satisfy Ed rather than all of us, which it didn't really help us in the long run.
And Mick became a bit too much about Mick in the end too.
I felt that way. I mean, and that's a little bit unkind in a way, but I think he did. But I think it's model behaviour. You do what you think the club wants you to do, and clearly Ed was running the show, and he couldn't help it either. He was so ego-driven himself, not in a nasty way, but that's what he is. He wouldn't have thought he was doing the wrong thing, but it in footy, you've got to be all on the same page, and you've got to be looking after each other and sacrificing for each other and helping each other, whereas there was a little bit of perhaps selfishness about it, I thought. But that's my opinion. I'm probably a little bit hard on them.
And did Geelong headhunt you, or did you sort of say, look, I need to step back a little bit, and then the discussion started, or how did that all come about?
Oh, fortunately, I was really good, been really close to Gareth Andrews over the years. He had a real estate business in Richmond, and then he actually came and played. He played and then was general manager of footy for us, and then finished up on the board back at Geelong. And he was the one, as much as anyone, who encouraged Geelong to talk to me about the footy management area. So, but I was pretty close to Cookie. Cookie was very good. Brian Cook was very good. So
I always loved the way you mentioned Brian Cook, and you speak of him in the same reverence as Wally. So, that for me shows how much you respected and how much of an influence he was as well. And I love it that it's ironic interviewing Tom Harley. Tom Harley speaks glowingly of Neil Balme and vice versa. Yep. So I've always enjoyed that side of it as well. I interviewed Hales last season at a function in Sydney, and he spoke glowingly of you and obviously your relationship with Tom. And then, let's face it, Tom comes in, he's a little bit of a surprise choice as captain because he wasn't the gun, and you have the problem with Steve Johnson, and you correctly back Hales and the leadership group to fix it, and they did.
Yes, no. Hales is very. He gets it. He gets what footy's all about, which is why he's doing the job he's doing. But it's so much about looking after each other and caring about each other. I mean, you still have to make the hard decisions. If Jono was a complete dickhead, you got to get rid of him. But he wasn't. He was just a bit naughty. So we went to the players wanted to handle it, and they did it really well. But we knew what was going to happen from it, and that was the important. I must admit, I caught up with Dane Swan this morning doing something else, and he was similar to Jono as a bloke, and he'd been involved in a bit of a fight with some people, but he'd gone in to help his mates and all that sort of stuff. And I always remember that Eddie was keen to, we got to give him, 1,000 weeks or burn him off or something. I said, well, hang on a minute. I said, well, what if your son was in that circumstance and his mates were in trouble? What would you want him to do? Would you want him to go in there and help his mates, or would you piss off and look after himself? Oh, yeah, you got a point. So, I mean, that's the way. That's just the way you have to do it. We're only dealing with people, and we can help them if we can. If they're complete dills, well, you get rid of them because you have to, because they're not living to your values. But if they're just a little bit naughty, well, you've got to be a bit understanding of them and put your arm around them a bit. And I think that's where footy's gone. We're much better at that now than we ever were.
Oh, look, and Eddie tries to deny it and says, no, nothing would have happened and all that. But I think D. Swan ending up at Brownlow medalist and a Collingwood great's got a lot to do with N. Balme, a bit more than E. Maguire. So, yeah.
Well, with Geelong, obviously this was a little bit ahead of the time. They had a little bit of a mid-season, not crisis as such, but a bit of a reset and a bit of a re-evaluation of the club mid-year, and it really stood them in good stead from that point onwards with Mark Bomber Thompson.
Oh yeah, it's most of it's all pretty logical. You go, okay, what do we got? Where are we? What are we doing? How are we reacting? Et cetera, et cetera. It's all, it's just people management, really. I mean, it's but you got to be honest about it. You got to look at it. And you got to say, okay, what can we do? And then somehow you've got to encourage the players to enjoy taking responsibility for what's going to happen. Because I've always had this crazy saying that the guy who's got the ball at his feet is CEO of the club. Because if he picks it up, we're going to be all right. If he doesn't pick it up, we're not. Yeah. And that's the depth of it. I mean, the players are really totally responsible for what happens to us, and we've got to encourage them to take that responsibility and enjoy it and play that way. And that's kind of what we had to do at Geelong to a degree, is say, well, come on, we're good enough for this. You just take your responsibility, enjoy it, look forward to it. Let's do it. We're good enough to do it. And that's, I mean, not every team can say that because every team's not going to win. But if you are good enough and you do it well enough and you control it well enough and you sacrifice yourself for all your teammates and you work for each other, well, the multiplier effect is quite significant.
And it held Geelong in pretty good stead from that point onwards.
Yeah. Well, they were good fun to work with, I must admit, and they hadn't won for a bloody long time, so I took the credit for that as well, as usual.
Fair call.
Yeah, why not, Balme? And you've still got that bag with the brick in it. Yeah, you've still got to carry that around. Yeah.
I do. It's got Richmond ND on it now. It used to have GFC ND on it before.
And Barmy, I think you've been pretty heavily involved in with the start-up of women's footy, and it's only with that, when I was interviewing you, the article those years ago, where I made the point where I'd been to watch Nord in the girls in a Sample Grand Final. They hadn't kicked a goal against South in the minor round, and thought, right, it's more important to be around when you know you're going to lose. Anyone can be around a winner, but let's do the right thing and be around when we're going to lose. And if you told me I'd be at a women game chanting Nord and yelling out number 35, bat 5, and that sort of thing, because what really won me over was the girls' buy-in. The guy who misses out, and he's 23rd, 24th,
in a grand final,
25th players, dummies on the dirt and all that sort of thing. The girls was a complete buy-in, and they were just so all together as a group. And Barmy said, well, it's funny you say that, because the Richmond 2017 side together was so much for a group. And I said, well, that might explain the result a bit more than we all thought. So I reckon that was a really important point, Barmy.
Oh, well, it is. I mean, that's the hard thing in footy. If you don't get a game, you think you've been left out. But, I mean, it depends on how close you are with your mates and how much you accept that and understand it. I mean, our 17 guys were fantastic. But, I mean, I must say, if you're talking about the girls, they are so grateful to be involved in this silly game. They're all wonderful, and they'll just get better and better and better as they go. But, I mean, it's sometimes a bit hard to sell that story, because if you're not in the team, you think, oh, bugger it, I'm not in the team, so who cares? But if you work together and you commit yourselves together and you understand that at the end of the day, you can only pick 22 blokes or 23 blokes to play, and just accept your role within the club and look after your mates, well, you're a much more powerful organisation and you're a much better person yourself. And then when it's your turn, they're still going to pick you. But if you go against them, they're not going to pick you. So it's selfish in one way because you understand that. But, I mean, it's really selfless in so many other ways that you're part of the act, and let's go.
And I think the point there where you said about the girls are so appreciative is just spot on. So, Nord, we had the showdown in the first round, and so involved in that, and going the Wolf Blast Centre afterwards, and the girls are thanking you for the chance to be in the room. And, it's sort of the other way around than what we get. And, I was, well, no, you're more than welcome. And you just sort of, wow, as an attitude. So it is, as you said, that they are just so engrossed that they're rapt to be a part of the game. They're more the game than probably the footy industry. And I still enjoy that side of it.
It's such a challenge. The poor old girls, because as I say to our girls, we've been playing since 1858. You've got a long way to go, and then they have, but they're getting better and better as they go. I saw our girls played Brisbane 2 weeks ago, and it was so much better than they played before, whereas last week they played and they got beaten and didn't play all that well, so they've still got a fair way to go. But the week before they were wonderful. So that's part of it. They'll keep learning, and I mean, the game's much more complex now than it ever used to be also, which makes it even harder for them in funny ways.
Well, obviously in 2016 you left Collingwood and came home, as you put it, to Richmond. Dimmer was in the same sort of situation as what Mark Thompson was. Were you able to put an arm around him and sort of say, or mentor him a little bit into say, look, this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to go about it, and then from then onwards Richmond haven't looked back?
Yeah, to agree, I did. He'd been to the US and done a few things because he realised that he had to change a little bit of what he was doing. He'd been fantastic, but I think principally in 2016 he felt that he had to make sure that the players knew if they did something wrong, and so he was really focusing on that to fix it, which is right, because if it doesn't work, well, you've got to fix it. You've got to do something about it. But my feeling was that he'd been a bit too negative. It was a bit too much of the what the hell did you do that for, rather than, in the same terminology, you can say,
Can we do it a different way?
Have a look at that. What do you think you should do now, and how can I help you? Is telling them the same thing. And I think that's what he changed. He changed that because the blokes were sort of hating him to a degree because he's always into them. But he wasn't meaning to be into them. He was trying to help them be better. And I think he changed his way of doing that in 17, which gave us a real shot at it. So, he was a damn good coach. He figured all that out himself. I think he genuinely said, I'm going to make sure that I coach them well and get them to know what they're doing right and wrong. But he was doing it in probably a slightly more negative way than he should have, and then he wasn't. So that really helped us enormously in 17.
And, so
37-year drought broken.
Yes.
I took credit for that as well.
Yeah, don't worry.
So call again.
Out of that, then probably the next, you're a bit unlucky to run into a ramp at Mason Cox in a prelim. And then,
wasn't he fantastic?
Yeah, that night he was unbelievable. Probably never reached anywhere near that level again since. But yeah, it was quite incredible that night. But then, the footy having to move around and COVID, so it's been a bit of a bizarre era as well.
Yeah, it was challenging the other, but we were terrific. We coped with it better than anyone else. I'm not quite sure why, but I think we just accepted where we were. So, to win 17 and then 19 and 20 was unbelievable, particularly when you think back to what silly bloody Brendan Gale said sometime before. He said, we're going to have 100,000 members and win 3 flags. And I was like, you got mad. Well, guess what? We got 100,000 members and we won 3 flags. So it's wonderful. It's really beautiful reinforcement for what he believed for our footy club, because he is an outstanding administrator, good person. Lets us do our job, but knows enough to buy in when he needs to buy in. But very good, very good.
And quite incredible, really, where you said Richmond probably did that best and buy-in and all that, where they're negative about playing at Marvel, and I think Hardwick's attitude there has hurt Richmond in the end. So it's quite weird that the buy-in to COVID and be up in Queensland, all in the bubble and all that, yet we don't want to drive 5 minutes down the road to Marvel. It's a weird comparison.
I don't get it. I must admit, I don't get it. We should never have said it, because
it was silly.
My view is you can play on the moon. It doesn't matter where you play. It's only you against them. Exactly. The ground doesn't do anything. So I'm really frustrated by it. I think it's more coincidence than reality, but maybe a few of our players, don't like playing there. But there's no reason. If you had to choose a place to play footy, you'd play in the place that's got a roof, so it doesn't matter whether it rains, and it's got a beautiful surface. So that's where you'd play, wouldn't you? But I guess any of us who play at the MCG love playing at the MCG as well. But so we don't love playing at Footy Park that much because the wind changes at quarter time.
Yes.
With the Adelaide Oval, it's just a touch more comfortable.
It is, isn't it?
Okay, Balme, there's a couple of things we've got to bring up. Modern footy, where we're at. Look, I thought Maynard last night that, thank goodness, the tribunal showed some common sense. I don't want you to comment on this one, but I'm really worried about Laura Kane's first week, I think, trying too hard and trying to place an imprint, and there's a bit of lack of footy nous there. I don't want you to add anything there. That's just my thoughts. But, where the game's at, we understand there's a lot of things happening behind the game legality-wise, and a couple of lawyers I'd love to shoot as well. But we get that it's had to change, but surely the Maynard bit was just a footy accident, for goodness sake. It's not. He's tried to smother. If you're trying to bump someone, tackle someone, there's that physicality side of it. If it goes wrong, we can understand getting banned for that. But a smother, for goodness sake.
Well, if they don't want that, they have to say the rule says you're not allowed to jump in the air to smother.
Yeah.
And if they do that, we get it. But I mean, I must admit, I've you know what I'm like, but I thought that they should have let him off because it wasn't fair. He didn't do anything wrong.
No.
But I thought he'd get weeks because that's what they've done all year. I mean, we had a kid, Ryan Mansell, who he bumped into a bloke and he got 3 weeks. I mean, there was no intent, and it was Aishi.
No, you're not allowed to touch. You're not allowed to touch an ace. You're not allowed to touch an ace. That's fair enough. Come on, Balme. Should have got 3 weeks. Not allowed to touch an ace. Yep.
No, but even Aishi said
I know.
he shouldn't have been rubbed out.
Yeah.
I mean, so I thought, well, if clearly they're going to give him time because they almost have to the way they've acted throughout the year. But I'm really pleased they didn't because I just don't think it's fair. But I think we're trying to solve the unsolvable.
Yes, and that's the point, that you can't eliminate all physicality from the game. The head must be sacrosanct. We've got to try and help. We all get that. And yes, the game's at it, but you can't eliminate all footy accidents. And that, for mine, was very much just a footy accident. And
well, it's a classic case.
We all feel sorry for Brayshaw.
Yep.
But I also agree that Kane Corn, where he said he doesn't turn to protect himself. He's a real worry. He's one of those, he's tunnel vision and doesn't get the act of protecting himself. And it's unlucky, and we feel sorry for him. But don't hang out the poor person otherwise.
Well, you've also got 168 years of evolution of that people are jumping, tackling. All right, we need to change the tackling and the head high stuff, but the running and jumping to smother the ball has been in the game since day dot.
Yeah, it's very. I mean, it's just almost impossible to. What we've done is we've rubbed blokes out in terms of what's happened to the player, the outcome. The outcome's this, therefore it's someone's fault. And that's why we were worried about the Maynard thing, because clearly something had happened, and it was clearly his fault in that he bumped into him, but he certainly didn't mean it. There was no intent or whatever. But it's really challenging. I think they've bitten off more they can chew in a way, and they're doing it for the right reasons. But I'm not quite sure of how we're going to get the outcome. Exactly. It's very challenging.
A lot of grey area at the moment still to work through. So
vitally, Balme, have gone through some health challenges. You had your first ever episode of an epilepsy attack at the age of 70, which is it's unusual, but it is a bit more over as we get older and all that. And you've had now to watch yourself a bit more carefully with your health. As blokes, we've all done it, all been invincible, and a couple of times you probably didn't watch your health afterwards as closely as you now need to. But you now understand exactly what you've got to do, and you've bought in, and there's an epilepsy walk coming up. Fill us all in there, Balme, please.
Yeah, I've always been a little bit naughty with my behaviour, but no, there was certainly no history of epilepsy at all. And I had this bloody amazing seizure and fit, and I was lucky that Carmel was there and looked after me. I finished up in hospital or whatever. But then when a mate of ours works in with the Epilepsy Foundation, and she said, well, can you help us promote this, what's going on around it? And I normally wouldn't do that sort of thing, but I thought, no, it's not a bad idea. And because people are a little bit kind of almost ashamed of being epileptic, if you know what I mean, and they don't talk about it enough.
Silly.
But also the challenge of epilepsy is they don't know what causes it. It just happens. Yeah. And fortunately, I've got some medication that helps me, and it's controlled the whole seizure thing. But apparently only 70% of the people get that. 30%, they just, their medication doesn't control it. So we do need, some money to try and find out what makes it happen and look after the people who have got it, who the medication doesn't help, etc. So they do the walk for epilepsy all through October, and I'm going to do something with it as well. And we're trying to raise a bit of money for people. So I've been really pleased to support them and help us. So I've done plenty of stuff around the place promoting it, and I've been everywhere talking about it, which is, again, not usually like me, but I'm really pleased and proud that I have, because there's been some wonderful response to it. But we do need for people to, if you go to the Walk for Epilepsy website and look out my name or whatever, and see if you can give $50 or something to help. And if we get enough of those sorts of things, we might be able to do a bit more research and get on top of it. So, I mean, it's something that I'm really proud that I'm supporting and doing.
We'll promote that on our socials as well.
Yeah, I'll certainly do that. And, let's be honest too. MMD until Neil Danaher with that was.
Oh, absolutely. It's not dissimilar to
No,
that at all. It's
no.
same, principally the same. Yeah.
You know, it was funny with that was with MMD, and then I did an article on David Palm, and I didn't know till talking to Jenny, David's sister, that Jim Palmy's dad had died of MMD and that. And geez,
I didn't realise that either.
Yeah. So there's just a lot more. Yeah, you probably can remember Jim back in those days because he was bloody good at the bar, Palmy Senior. That was how he always gave directions. You didn't go down Green Hill Road. You went past the Feathers, and then you turned at the Feathers, drove down, and then you go on that next left, and you'll go past the Kenzie, and then the Marrittville, and yeah.
Robin Hood,
he was a character. He was a character, Palmy Senior.
Oh, I have been to all those places.
Yes. I think we all have, Palmy. All right, Palmy, we'll go through in your hardest opponents.
You can mention a couple. You don't have to mention one or two. You can do 3 or 4.
Oh, there's lots of them. I mean, Jeff Southey was a beautiful player, but I always struggled to get a kick against David Darcy. Would you believe that?
Yeah, Luke's there. Yep.
But I played on him a couple of times. He played very well, and even Cowboy Neil was always I found difficult to get a kick on. But
he's struggling health-wise as well too. Yeah.
Lots of other ones as well, but. No, some beautiful players playing, and I just enjoyed playing the game. But some of those were hard to get a kick on. It wasn't much fun. But I think Dave might have got a couple of 3 votes against me at some stage.
And of course, best players played, with as well. Like your Richmond side, Bartlett, Stewart, Burke.
If you don't like Bartlett, Stewart, Burke, and Royce Hart, etc., you're not fair dinkum. But there's some beautiful players. I mean, you can't go past, the Careys and that of the world and the Jakoviches and even Dusty Martin now. It's very hard to find a better player than Dusty. He's such beautiful feeling around the ball, etc. But there's lots of beauties. But
because I've always said Royce Hart in terms of mate Bushy will be listening. He's a Richmond fanatic, and I said, well, if I'm Royce Hart versus Carey, it's a toss-up. And that's how good a player Royce Hart was.
Oh, Royce is only 6'1.5", 6'2" max or something, but he just
incredible
beautiful
reach.
Jump at the ball, marvellous kick. We busted his gut the whole time. You got everything out of him. He's fantastic. Yeah, great to play with. He was very, very important player for us. Yeah, but it's almost impossible to pick the best player because there's so many really good players around. But Gary Ablett was pretty good, and the young bloke was pretty good as well. And lots of very, very, very good players. I mean, Joel Selwood. If you had to pick a team to play for your life, you'd nearly pick Joel Selwood in it, I reckon.
He's sort of like the Alan Border of batsmen, footballers. Yeah, you pick Selwood to play for your life any day.
Yes, exactly. You would. Yeah.
Your 1994 All-Australian team has some pretty handy names in it as well. Silvani.
Oh, he could play a bit, couldn't he?
Greg Williams, Guy McKenna, Glenn Jakovic.
Blue is beautiful. Yeah, and Jacko, that's what I mean. You just can't go past them, really. They're wonderful. And even in the real old days, I mean, Bobby Skilton's been up as the whatever he is, the champion of champions, the champions today from the AFL. And I mean, blokes like him, you can't go past them. They're beautiful players. I mean, as you said, Ian Stewart before, and I mean, they're just wonderful players.
Now, I have to ask, was there an opportunity for you potentially to come to the Crows?
Oh, yeah, we were very serious about it. And again, I didn't particularly want to leave Richmond. I love Richmond, but Roo had spoken to me quite a bit about the possibility of coming, and it was only really because I had this crazy seizure stuff that my medico said to me, you're crazy if you take on a more anxiety in your work, and I'd recommend that you don't do that. And that's really what made our mind up in the end, because I reckon there's a reasonable chance I probably could have come to help the Crows, and I reckon I could have had a decent influence as well, but it wasn't. It was just they said don't do it. You're crazy if you do it, because who knows what could happen. So, but no, we were certainly serious about it. Yeah, we love Adelaide. I mean, obviously Carmel's family's from Adelaide, and we're I living in Adelaide, had a great time and loved the place. So we were very serious about it, but didn't do it.
Now, Balme did me a real favour at this lunch a couple of weeks ago, Pete, without even realising it. Someone's asked, that was there a day where everything just went in sync as a player or a coach? And Balme read the room and said the 1984 SANFL Grand Final. So I've quickly glimpsed around the room and I've seen which people are clapping. So I've made a beeline about my book straight after Balme's got off stage. And I did okay that day, Balme, so don't worry. I was well in front of giving you a lift back to town, so that was greatly appreciated.
Well, it was certainly a wonderful day, I must say. It's they're one of the days you remember very, very, very vividly. Yeah, beautiful.
And you've got a book as well. Do you want to give that a little plug?
Oh, yes. I mean, Anson Cameron wrote a beautiful book called Neil Balme, The Tale of Two Men. And, how it happened is that Carmel and the kids were convinced, trying to say, you should write a book. You've been in footy for 50 years. And I said, that's the last thing I want to do, blow my own trumpet. And then they knew that I knew Anson very well. And he'd written about a dozen books, and I'd read them all, and he was a friend of ours anyway. So they said, well, what if we got Anson to write it? And I said, well, now you're talking. But he did a great job because he interviewed me for ages and got all the stories around it. But then he went out to the real world and got the truth. so the story, it's very good. It's a fantastic. I think, again,
it's a great book.
It's a good footy story book, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love my mentions. I thought they were the highlight of the book too, Balme. So yeah,
I'm sure you've got an autographed copy.
Yeah, I might have a couple in that regard. There was one moment with Anson and that, and I said to Anson, geez, is it people expect you're just going to give a copy of your book and answer? And Balme's gone, oh no, Malcolm, you've started him, and away he went. And Anson probably spoke in terms of his frustration in that regard about the same as Balme does on Joe Goodnick. So it was an interesting conversation for the next few minutes.
He's a good man. He's a terrific man. Yeah.
And you're, sort of dimmer finishing up,
I love it where you hammer the point that Norwood Football Club is your club. And, greatly appreciate that. Always love spending time with you and that, and privileged in that way. But, yeah, always as a Nord, I love you really make that point. And we feel that's pretty important and, something greatly appreciated as well, Balme.
Oh, thank you. No, that's the way I think anyway.
Yes. Yeah.
Mate, I have to thank you for everything that you've provided to footy. 270 games at Norwood, 49 at Woodville West Torrens, 98 at Melbourne as a coach, but more importantly, 176 as a player. My all-time favourite grand final, which we've mentioned on one of our flashback segments here on our podcast, was the 84 grand final, and I reckon I could almost call word for the first quarter of that grand final. So it's been a great honour and a privilege for me to speak to you tonight, and keep up the good work, mate.
Thanks, Balme.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Malcolm. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks, Balme, and look forward to catching up, mate. Thanks, Balme.
Good on you. Thanks, Balme.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at Sportscast SA. We'll see you next time on Game On.